last night I was flying around and I was having the time of my life. It was just one of those flights. The air had smoothed out perfectly. I had some really good music on in my headphones. I pulled into a foot drag on the nice soccer fields, cranked a right-hand turn, hit full power, and nailed a simultaneous wingtip and foot drag.
Did you fucking see that? I probably shouldn't try that again, but that was fucking sick.
This was my first time ever doing that maneuver. In the past, I've done wingtip drags, but never while doing it with my foot and the wingtip on the ground at the same time. Now, obviously, I'm comfortable with this sort of thing. I've, been flying for a while, but I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a risky, dangerous maneuver. And I guess it kind of got me thinking, what are the most dangerous aspects of paramotor flying? So that brings us to this video where I've developed a list of the top 5 factors that I think are relevant to the current state of paramotoring. There are also 5 things that I have personally done and personally shown on this channel. But what I want to do is kind of break down different ways to mitigate each of these categories. Before we jump into those 5 reasons, I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, myself, aka Risky Biscuits Co. If you visit the first link in the description, tuckergott.com, you will see a large array of our Risky Biscuits Co merch. The theme of Risky Biscuits is kind of very relevant to this video because Risky Biscuits is about taking calculated risks for maximum enjoyment. That's what we're talking about today. Also, if you want to get an ozone wing for your paramotor, hit me up, info@tuckergott.com. I can help you out with ozone products as well. All right, let's get into risk factor number 1, and that is flying to fast food restaurants. Obviously, major choking hazard. If you're flying in the air, you choke on your burger, you're going down. Second, tons of obstacles. You never know if you're coming into the Burger King, there might be power lines. You might get hit by a car. Third, if you do it too much, you might just end up having a heart attack. I'm just kidding. That is not one of the reasons, but I mean, kind of holds some truth. Let's get into real danger number 1, and that is low acro. I guess you can loosely define acro as doing certain bank angle maneuvers or certain pitch attitude maneuvers. You're building energy on your wing, you're throwing your wing around upside down, getting into more dynamic, intense maneuvering. And that sort of thing is cool and all when it's up at a high altitude, but the real danger is when we bring it down low. And I guess there's 2 main reasons why you shouldn't do it low. One, if you botch the maneuver and maybe you mistime it, you don't pull enough outside brake, you can take a collapse on your wing, and you want altitude to be able to sort that out. And if you can't sort it out, you want altitude to be able to throw your reserve. The second reason why doing it down low isn't good is because if you simply misjudge how high you are, you might be executing the actual maneuver perfectly, but you come in contact with the ground, and that's never good. There's actually been a very recent fatality that involved exactly this. How to mitigate the risk? Kind of obvious in this case. Take it way up high, especially when you're learning. A lot of people say have a hard deck of maybe 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet, where you start your maneuvers at 3,000, you do them, and you conclude them by a certain altitude. The other thing I would recommend is as you're progressing into these maneuvers, try to do it the right way. Get instruction, go to an SIV course. That always helps in kind of learning the proper way to do maneuvers. Next, danger number 2 is flying over water. Obviously, I'm guilty of this. You guys see me foot dragging reservoirs, rivers, flying over the Bahamas for miles on end. The danger is pretty obvious, drowning. If you come into the water, you're strapped into a harness with 4 different points of connection, lines tangling everywhere, a heavy motor on your back. There are, however, a lot of really good ways to mitigate the risk of water. One is not flying over it at all, avoiding getting in a situation where you might be forced to land in water. Another big one is having the appropriate safety gear, flotation for your paramotor, possibly a safety vest or life vest for yourself, a hook knife to slash lines. If you are gonna foot drag water, foot dragging water basically means you're fully committed that if your engine goes down, in a split second, you're gonna be in that water. You don't have any time really to think about it. So if you're gonna do something like that, which I've done before and I've shown on this channel before, you wanna use every piece of safety gear that you can. And if you're gonna do it, try to do it over shallow water. Hopefully something you can stand up in, close to a shore. If we look at the example when I was flying in the Bahamas, not only did I have every piece of safety gear, flotation, and hook knives on my body, I also had a rescue boat chasing me for the majority of that flying, so if I did go down, they could come and help me out as soon as possible. Okay, third danger, This is one that doesn't even involve flying, but it happens so often. I guarantee you'll see at least 3 to 5 posts on Facebook this summer of it happening. And that is ground starting your paramotor. Pull starting your engine with a paramotor sitting on the ground and you standing next to it. Why is it so dangerous? If there's a mechanical failure on the throttle linkage or carburetor, or a human error, you accidentally squeeze the throttle and that engine revs up to full power, it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to stop it, and it's highly likely that propeller is going to come in contact with your body and chop you up. Very recently, a buddy of mine actually sent me some very gory pictures that I am not going to put in a YouTube video because they'll probably take it down. Let's just say there were chunks of flesh and blood thrown across this guy's garage, onto vehicles that were nearby, and all over the ground. Last I heard, he was in surgery and they were figuring out how bad it really was. But luckily, there are a few ways that we can mitigate the risk. There's a saying of on your back or on a rack. If the paramotor's on your back and it goes to full power, you might fall down and smash your face, but more than likely you're going to be able to control it in a much better way and your limbs are protected from getting into the paramotor. On a rack is almost a step better. If you have a rack on your car or a bed of a pickup truck and you ratchet strap the engine down and it goes to full power, if you've done it right, it'll just sit there stationary while you figure out a way to kill the engine. The easiest way to avoid this is just don't ground start whatsoever. But if you are gonna do it for whatever reason, always make sure your throttle linkage is clear and your carburetor returns to idle. Always hold your throttle in a safe position that prevents you from knocking into full power, that has your thumb on the kill switch ready to kill it. Even though you probably won't be able to hold back the power of the paramotor if it goes to full power, try to brace it in a way that gives you the best chance. And third or fourth, if you have a safe start like my Scout does, make sure that is on and functional. The safe start detects engine RPM, and if it spikes, it kills the engine automatically. Number 4 danger on our list, I'm calling it proximity flying. Flying in close proximity to the ground, to trees, obstacles, things like that. There's a couple reasons why this is dangerous. One is if you have an engine failure, you're gonna be coming in for an emergency landing in a split second. And the other reason is the risk of hitting power lines or obstacles that you don't see. And I think this is something I've personally noticed in the paramotor world recently. It seems like there's been a lot of incidents where people are hitting power lines. And power lines are really, really hard to see, and sometimes people get really injured in situations like this. Even if it's not hitting the power line, but just turning and trying to avoid it and then hitting the ground. So ways to mitigate the risk. If you're gonna fly low, it's always recommended to fly into the wind. That way, if you do have a forced landing because of an engine failure, your ground speed's lower and you can land easier than taking a downwind landing. Second, only fly low in super familiar areas where you know there aren't power lines. If it's a new area, scope it out from a high altitude. Really look for power lines or obstacles or poles, anything that you might, hit. There's always a risk in flying low, but to be honest, flying low to the ground is one of the most wonderful things about flying a paramotor. You feel like a bird, it's such a rush. So I'm never gonna tell you not to fly low, but just try to take some steps to mitigate the risk and do it safely. Number 5 on my list of biggest dangers is flying with others, aka midair collisions. This is something I've also noticed recently. It seems to be happening more and more. We covered an incident in one of the most recent reacting to crash videos where 2 paramotors collided and Buddy got a quarter of his wing chopped off. Luckily, everyone landed just fine, but the point is, it seems like this is happening more often. Why is it dangerous? Obviously, 2 paramotors collide. It can be pretty catastrophic. You can get entangled. It can be really hard to throw a reserve in a situation like that. We've got blind spots. Our field of view is very wide open, but behind us and above us are kind of the main blind spots. How to mitigate the risk? Always be aware. Keep your head on a swivel. If you're flying with a group of people, always try to keep tabs on them. That's what I always do, is kind of have in my mind, someone's over there. In a couple minutes, make sure they're still there. And if you don't know where they are, don't ever crank a quick violent maneuver if you're not really completely sure that your airspace is clear. Another big one is fly-ins. I think recently 2 instances of midair collisions happened at fly-ins where the airspace is mega congested. If you're like me, I just avoid fly-ins whatsoever. If you do go to fly-ins, I say take off, exit the area, go far away, and always be careful in that transition zone where you're coming in for a landing or takeoff and everyone else is trying to do the same thing. All right, so those are my 5 biggest dangers that I think are relevant to the current state of paramotoring. If you've got other ones, feel free to comment them down below. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, helps the video out a lot. And if you want to support the channel and look super awesome in some Risky Biscuits Co merch, check out the first link in the description down below. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I've got 2 awesome kind of bigger ideas I'm working on right now, so stay tuned for that. Till then, fly safe, have fun. Peace.